WNST out on the road this week, and I'll be hopefully joining the Caps in Toronto next week as we get the playoffs going in the NBA. But we're all eyes on the NFL draft and the 16th position for the Baltimore Ravens, and plenty of mock drafts out there, some of which I mock and will mock in the past and in the future, but all over the place with the 16th pick. This guy is the director of player personnel at CGS All-Star, also the creator of NFL Draft Bible. We had him on last year. He's one of our defending champions around here, hailing out of New Jersey. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Rick Saratella. That's 2 R's, 2 L's, and out at the NFL Draft Bible. What's going on, Rick? This is your time of the year, correct?
Indeed it is, Nestor. Appreciate it. It's heating up. It's that time of year, and I've seen you done your scouting report on me as well, so thank you for that.
Well, let's go scouting report on the Ravens. I mean, I have seen many wide receivers mocked to the Ravens. I have seen right tackles mocked to the Ravens. I have spent the last 2.5, 3 months really believing they were going to try to replace, if not augment, Terrell Suggs. And I really believe they were looking for help on the back end at a draft that is allegedly thick with corners and thick with rush ends. I figured that 16th pick would wind up being on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, it's funny because the Ravens have a couple of different directions they can go, and they're in that position right there smack in the middle where you kind of have to take a wait-and-see approach because most likely what's going to happen is one of these top 10 guys that they value is probably going to slide to them. And, Baltimore not necessarily in the market for a quarterback. I think at least 2 quarterbacks will be chosen before they come up. And that means, one of these guys that they value very highly is most likely going to fall to them. So they got to take the wait and approach and see what happens. But now you talk about wide receiver, and I think Mike Williams is off the board. Maybe Corey Davis is available. Maybe John Ross is there. But my guy, and I know a little bit of a bad taste left in the mouth with Max Williams at the tight end position. But my guy, if he's on the board, O.J. Howard, to me, would be the biggest playmaker addition that they can add through the draft. And that is where I might consider offense if he is still on the board.
A guy like him and a guy like Ozzie, who obviously relishes these Alabama players, what if he's sitting there at 10 or 11 or 12? And, would Ozzie think so much of him to try to go up and get him? Because certainly at 16, there's a possibility, and the Ravens have enough powder in the keg to be able to do that. Where is the value on a tight end that, we've seen tight ends change the game, from the New York Giants straight on through what the Patriots like to do. And, obviously the Chargers have had one for 15 years. It really is a difference maker when you have that guy.
And I'll take it a step further, Nestor, and I'll tell you that O.J. Howard is one of the top 5 players in this year's draft. For me, I look down the road 2-3 years from now, and this guy is going to be the top tight end in the league. And when you have that type of talent, hey, I'm all for trading up.
All right, so, some other names and some guys that might be around at that period of time. I mean, I am hearing a ton about the right tackle from Wisconsin. Now, we just lost one Wisconsin tackle for $9.5 million a year out to Detroit. I would find that to be a fascinating play for the Ravens after drafting left tackle last year with the 6th pick.
Well, the other interesting aspect here is that, we don't know how Ryan Ramczyk is checked out medically at the NFL Scouting Combine, and I know he's going to be recalled back for another evaluation before the draft. He had that hip procedure following the season, and to me, when you're selecting that high and you got an offensive lineman coming off a hip injury, to me, he was a borderline first-round grade to begin with. Just 1 year at the University of Wisconsin, obviously transferring from Wisconsin Whitewater, and held his own, has great film. But to me, Forrest Lamp is a guy, to me, I think is the top offensive lineman. A lot of people have him pegged as in the interior. Hey, some people like him as tackle, probably going to play guard or even center at the next level. So Forrest Lamp is a guy. And you could even throw in the Utah offensive tackle, Garrett Bowles. I think, if you want to try and plug him over at the right tackle position, he fits there nicely. And, we all know offensive line, every team in the league, I can tell you that, is looking to improve their offensive line.
I've seen Cam Robinson as a top 10 pick, and I've seen him falling out of the first round. It really is kind of wild beyond the couple of the Solomon Thomas and the Myles Garretts and the Lattimores who aren't going to make it. A Hooker, maybe Jamal Adams as well, who look to be top 10 guys. There are very few mock drafts that even resemble each other at this point for me. And there used to be a time where the top 6, 8, 10 guys, there was that cliff where everyone really agreed on those guys. I don't know that there's 5 guys that anybody could agree on in this draft.
Yeah, especially when you take in the factor with the franchise quarterbacks. A lot of people feel like there are none in this year's draft class, and usually those are the sexy names up at the top of the draft. We saw it last year with Wentz and Goff, not so much this year. And, you know, we mentioned O.J. Howard as a potential top 5 player in this year's draft. Other people might not see that at all. I could see Curtis Samuel, a guy from Ohio State that no one's even talking about being one of the top players in this year's draft. How about a kid from UConn? I had a chance to see at his pro day workout, had a phenomenal NFL combine. I believe heavily that he'll be a lock for the first round, potentially at cornerback. Obi Melifonwu, 6'4" cornerback. This is the wave of the future. So there's a lot of guys not being talked about that could also surprise. Christian McCaffrey, another wild card. You could see him as high as number 8, maybe as low as number 20 to Denver. But at this point, it seems like Christian McCaffrey is a consensus top 20 overall selection. And at a month or two or before the NFL scouting combine, I'm not so sure.
You said 2 quarterbacks will be off the board by the time the Ravens get there at 16. I guess you're talking about Watson and you're talking about Trubisky, but I don't think there's been any consensus on any of that. And look, the season ended with a third of the teams in the league not having a quarterback, right? And here we are, 6 weeks on the backside of free agency and getting ready for the draft. And I don't know that any of the teams have really addressed their needs. Bringing Tyrod Taylor back, obviously Tony Romo, everyone thought he would be quarterbacking somewhere. He would be in one of those seats, and that hasn't happened now. It's been a fascinating offseason, not to mention Colin Kaepernick and the political situation around him as to what are these teams without quarterbacks going to do if Mitchell Trubisky or Deshaun Watson aren't the answer for them.
Yeah, a lot of people had Tony Romo pegged for Houston or Denver, and then, Colin Kaepernick seems like nobody wants to touch him, as well as Ryan Fitzpatrick still out there, can't even get a whiff of a contract. So you take a look around the league, and you mentioned it, all these teams out there that not only need quarterbacks, but you take a look at the next generation of some of these teams with the Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Carson Palmer, Eli Manning. There's a lot of teams that are going to need to groom a quarterback for the future, and you see how beautifully Bill Belichick has it set up there in New England. He seems to draft a quarterback each and every year up there. We talked about maybe not the sexy franchise quarterbacks in this year's draft, but at the end of the day, I do think you're going to see 5 or 6 quarterbacks selected in the top 50 overall picks. And you mentioned Deshaun Watson, Mitchell Trubisky, Watson, the guy Rodney Dangerfield right now, getting no respect. A lot of people thought he might be the first overall pick last year when you had Wentz and Goff. Now,
all he does is win, right? I mean, let's look up Deshaun Watson's track record. Win, win, win. I don't know what more you're looking for from him than that, but I also know that it does not necessarily translate college to the NFL. We've seen that for a generation now.
Well, and that's part of the NFL draft process. You get here in April and you have weeks to kill, and then suddenly you start finding holes and picking his game apart. But, the criticism on Watson is going to be his decision-making, some of his accuracy issues, whereas Trubisky, his short to intermediate accuracy is probably as good as anybody in the draft, and he doesn't have quite the arm of Watson, and Watson probably has better mobility in the pocket and biding time and moving around. But I think that's also a skill set that people might be sleeping on with Trubisky. Now, the lack of experience, I compare it kind of to when Mark Sanchez came back out a few years ago, maybe not ready for the next level. But, hey, when you see opportunity, you have to pounce. Not a strong quarterback class. And Deshaun Kaiser now, probably the guy that you're hearing. I don't know if he's attending the draft in Philadelphia, but probably could get a little bit lonely in that green room. I wouldn't be surprised if Patrick Mahomes from Texas Tech comes off the board before Kaiser, and then you hear some buzz around Davis Webb, who was competing there with Patrick Mahomes. There's a first-round buzz on him, and Phil Savage, the director of player personnel for the Senior Bowl, very well connected in the league, a lot of friends, a lot of executives and GMs that he's friendly with.
Including me, by the way.
Yeah, and hey, he's saying that the first-round buzz around Davis Webb is legitimate. So, again, when you take a look at the need around the league, I do think all these guys are coming off the board in that top 50 range.
Well, if the top two are already off and you're sitting at 16 or below, if you're the Ravens, it becomes a trade bait situation. And I think every year that's one of the great questions. Even last year when the Ravens had the 6th pick, will 2 quarterbacks be off? And then what does that mean for players falling to you? In the case of Myles Garrett, Rick, it's consensus, right? I mean, we haven't smelled anything like this in a long time but I always think, well, it's the Browns, they'll screw it up. But are you convinced 5 years from now Myles Garrett will have been the best player in this class?
It appears that way, and right now it's hard to argue with that sentiment. But, hey, it's smokescreen season, and I saw a report recently where they're considering Leonard Fournette now with the number 1 overall pick. And, you talk about the running back position. Hey, I like at least 3 running backs in the first round: Fournette, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey. We haven't seen 3 running backs in the first round, I think, in at least 5 years. So another position where, a little resurrection here with the running back position. But I think
Zeke Elliott had a little bit to do with that, right? I mean, when they are having success, but part of that whole era of the Terrell Davises and the 6th-round running backs and being able to find guys like that, we heard for years and years that there's just not. Hey, safety's another position where nobody ever took a safety in the first round. It was like heresy in the era of Ed Reed. Well, that's all changed, right?
Yeah, well, and you talk about safety when the Steelers and the Ravens were winning Super Bowls. They had Troy Polamalu. You had Ed Reed. You had, even with the Colts when they made their run and won the Super Bowl that year, they had Bob Sanders there at the safety position, which was a key cog position. And, now with the running back position, too, you're seeing that as a game changer potentially. And a lot of different scenarios could happen because, like you said, I had about 18 players with a first-round grade, so when you get into that 16 range, there could be a lot of moving and shaking, so to speak, because every team is going to have a different value on these guys. But you mentioned the running back position and guys like Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, maybe paving the way for a guy like Leonard Fournette. But, however, you talk about Ezekiel Elliott. If you look at who the second leading rusher was last year, this guy kind of gets lost in the mix. But the Chicago Bears got Jordan Howard with the 150th pick overall. So there's always going to be that school of thought where, hey, I can wait on a running back. I can, maybe get a guy like a Curtis Samuel, Alvin Kamara, who's very similar to Christian McCaffrey, or a guy like Donta Foreman, who I really love out of Texas. Nobody's talking about this 240-pound bruising back, ran a 4.4. 40-yard dash at his pro day. And, hey, there's a guy on day 2 or even day 3 that could fit the Baltimore Ravens mold.
We are chatting with Rick Saratella. He does all things NFL Draft at CGS All-Star as well as at the NFL Draft Bible. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Rick Saratella. That's SERRITELLA. Rick, tell everybody what you guys do out there at NFL Draft Bible and the CGS All-Star.
Well, this is my first year serving as Director of Player Personnel for the College Gridiron Showcase, and that was held down in Texas in January. We had 111 NFL scouts attend, 176 players, and a lot of these guys, they didn't get the Senior Bowl, Shrine Game, or NFLPA Collegiate Bowl invite, but when you take a look around the league and you see how teams like the Patriots and the Packers and the Steelers and Ravens, for that, they build their teams through the draft. They know how to identify players that fit their scheme, and they don't overspend in free agency. They don't go out and sign other teams' players. They identify guys that fit their mold. They'll have them on the practice squad, and they'll promote them accordingly. And to me, hey, you're supposed to hit on the first, second, third round. That's where you find your starters. But everybody knows you make your true money in the mid to late rounds. And those undrafted free agents, nearly a third of every NFL roster consists of undrafted free agents. So what we're doing at the NFL Draft Bible, we take the guys rank, 350 guys get invited to the combine right now. We're kind of ranking those 350 to 1,000 ranked. We go 1,000 deep at the NFL Draft Bible. We'll have that up on the website. So breaking down all the pro day numbers on that. And then we have the 2018 NFL Draft Bible prospectus coming out. So we've already turned the page, taken a look ahead at next year with scouting reports on prospects for 2018 and beyond. And what we like to do here at the NFL Draft Bible, we don't just rank draft eligible guys, but we take all the players in college football into the equation, regardless of draft class. So whether you're Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen or this freshman Auburn sensation at quarterback now, we'll take every draft class, rank those accordingly, and we'll have that out before the start of the football season.
You mentioned teams that have drafted well, and obviously the Patriots have the pelts on the wall at this point. I'm convinced they're still cheating, by the way, Rick. But that'll be in the book later on in life, I'm sure. Once we get some sort of FBI, CIA investigation into whatever they're doing now to cheat. But for the Ravens, Ozzy's missed a lot lately, right? Whether it's Matt Elam or Arthur Brown or even Kamalea Correa last year. Obviously they had the situation a number of years ago taking the linebacker out of Texas in Sergio Kindle, who never made it onto the field. That has been a choppy part of the Ravens evaluation process. And meanwhile, the Brandon Williams and the Rick Wagners and the Kyle Juszczyks, all from one draft where they blew the first 3 rounds, but blew it up in the 4th and 5th and 6th rounds. It's been a strange business, I think, for the Ravens the last 5 years. And more than any other draft, not having made the playoffs 3 out of 4 years, this is about as important as it gets. This is a really key offseason for this franchise.
Yeah, you make some valid points there, and I think with the NFL draft, what you have to understand, for the fans listening at home, people think 300 is a good batting average in baseball. Well, I'll tell you, it's a good batting average to hit on your NFL draft. If you could hit 2 or 3 guys a draft, you're doing pretty well for yourself. If you take a look around the league and you take a look at the percentages at how teams do, hey, you could, as a general manager in the NFL, you can live a very long lifespan in the NFL now, which is a few years, but off of one strong draft can carry you a very far way. So, I have a lot of confidence in Ozzy, and I think he'll be okay. And, you talk about that tight end position, and nobody can identify a playmaking tight end like he can. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Last thing for you on the Ravens, and I guess there's, the thought of this is you only have that one pick at 16, but where is the depth in the draft? And maybe the notion of taking a wide receiver, and, I didn't even mention Brashad Perryman, who is still a mystery man around here 2 years into this, and they burned the number 1 on him a couple of years ago and are waiting around. But if they were to go wide receiver, whether it's Corey Davis or John Ross or somehow Mike Williams falls to them through something miraculous, or they take a running back or they take a tight end, there's enough depth here, 2nd, 3rd round, at that cornerback position, at that rush edge, to feel safe that they could still get a quality playmaker with those picks in the 40s and the 70s?
Yeah, the pass rushers are going to come off the board fast and furious, and I'll throw Hassan Reddick as a dark horse candidate, someone who played with his hand in the dirt at Temple, played inside linebacker at Senior Bowl and did very well with it. But I'll tell you what, this kid can play the edge. Crazy athleticism, and I'll tell you, in the Ravens type of scheme, if they use him in the right kind of situation, I could see Hassan Reddick as a possible dark horse first-round candidate. And, hey, if you could come back in the 2nd round with a guy like Chris Godwin from Penn State, who's proven that he could play on the outside. This guy's never played in the slot. He's always played on the outside. All of a sudden, you pluck a Chris Godwin in the 2nd round. Maybe you put him on the perimeter outside with Brandon Perryman, and you slide Mike Wallace back in the slot. That would be a good power play, in my opinion.
Hey, man, great having you on. We're going to send everybody out to check out your work out at the NFL Draft Bible, as well as CGA All-Star and the game down there. He is Rick Saratella, and you can follow him out on Twitter under his name, Rick Saratella. That's Serritella. Rick will be following you right on through draft weekend, man. Thanks for coming on. Good to visit.
Hey, always appreciate it. Thank you, Nestor.
You got it. Draft season is here. We are hitting all things NFL draft, and, of course, Luke's all over that as well out at WNST.net. But we got you covered for the Orioles on the road this week, as well as the Caps getting into the playoffs, and the Wizards as well, monitoring all things around here. And anything you miss, you can find out in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile devices. Download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there, and you can get a little inspiration for the bikini season now that we've had a couple of 80-degree days out at PlanetOfTriumphs.com. That's a cool website that'll get you inspired and off the couch. Last but never least, if there is breaking news, it comes to you first on the WNST Tech Service. That is all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Kolatzis will be here on Thursday. He'll be driving you home, getting you ready with the SSV on WNST. I'm stoked about the Caps. I'm wearing my Caps Courage hat right now. I'm wearing my Geddy Lee Major League Baseball shirt out on our Facebook Live and our YouTube WNSTV channel. And I am a very available individual. If you need me, you can email me nasty@WNST.net. We're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and of course streaming live all the time. And we've got our trips all set up now for London. We're awaiting Green Bay and Nashville and Minneapolis, as well as wherever the Raiders are going to play. We are back on the Purple Road Trip Trail. $100 off for anybody that's been on a WNST road trip for London. Throw me an email. I'd love to get you involved, take you over to jolly old England and the UK with us. We're doing it all, man. We're doing the I, doing the O2, doing Wembley, fish and chips. Might even have some beer. It'll be cold. I don't drink warm beer. I know what the rumor is, but Nestor doesn't roll that way. All my beer is cold. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.